The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines as Captain Sarah Thompson and her crew of 4 astronauts drifted toward the red planet. Mars was never supposed to be more than just another stop for research, but their mission quickly turned into something far more dangerous. They had been sent to examine the surface for signs of life, but what they found beneath the dust and rocks would change everything. It all started when they received an unusual signal from the farthest region of Mars' northern hemisphere. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. No, this signal seemed artificial. It was weak, but it was there, a strange pulse that repeated at intervals too perfect to be random. Sarah knew that this could be a chance to make history, an ancient signal from an unknown civilization. The team was skeptical, but they had to check it out. They had trained for years for moments like this, moments that could change humanity's understanding of the universe. As they landed and stepped onto the cold, barren surface, they could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. The signal was coming from a small valley, a place where the ground seemed unnaturally smooth, as if something had been buried there. The team gathered their equipment, set up scanners, and started digging. Hours passed, and just when they thought they might be wasting their time, one of the sensors gave an alarm. It found something. The crew worked quickly, clearing away the dust and rubble. Beneath the surface, hidden deep in the ground, lay an object unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was rectangular in shape, covered in a thick layer of dust, with strange symbols carved into its surface. It didn't look like a rock or any kind of natural formation. This was made by someone, or something. At first, they thought it was just a relic, maybe something left behind by an ancient Martian civilization. But the more they studied it, the more they realized this was something far more important. The symbols on the surface were not from any known language or civilization. They were completely alien. The material the artifact was made of was unlike anything they had on Earth. It was indestructible, a metal so advanced that even their tools couldn't scratch it. Nothing about this made sense. Sarah ordered the team to bring it back to their research station. They carefully loaded the object onto their rover and made their way back to the ship. As they worked to decipher the symbols, the team couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One of the crew members, Lieutenant Ethan, began to act strangely. He was the first to be drawn to the artifact's strange power, unable to stop staring at the glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. It started with a simple vision, flashes of images, half-formed and impossible to understand. Ethan shook it off at first, thinking it was just fatigue from the long hours of research. But the visions became more vivid, and soon he couldn't tell where the dreams ended and reality began. In these dreams, he saw an Earth-like world, lush and full of life, but there was something deeply wrong about it. The skies were dark, and the world was slowly dying. Cities lay in ruins, and strange creatures roamed the surface, their eyes filled with a terrifying emptiness. Sarah didn't understand what Ethan was experiencing, but it was clear that something had triggered these visions. He couldn't explain them, and soon, neither could the rest of the crew. The artifact, it seemed, was more than just an object. It was somehow connected to this planet, Earth. The strange symbols started to form patterns in their minds, like they were being drawn into some kind of trance. It wasn't long before the crew realized they weren't just seeing visions, they were receiving messages. The artifact was trying to tell them something. But what? Late one night, as Sarah sat in her quarters, reviewing data, she received an urgent call from Ethan. His voice was shaking. "Captain, you need to come to the lab. It's happening again. The visions, they're showing me something. Something from Earth. And it's not good. We have to get back. Something terrible is coming." Sarah rushed to the lab, where Ethan was standing in front of a screen displaying the symbols, now glowing brightly. Sweat dripped down his forehead, and his hands trembled as he pointed to the symbols on the screen. The patterns were becoming clearer now, and for the first time, Sarah saw something that chilled her to the bone. Earth. The symbols were not just warnings. They were directions. directions to something buried deep beneath Earth's surface. The thought made Sarah's heart race. How could this artifact know about Earth? Mars had been lifeless for millions of years. The artifact had no connection to anything they knew. Yet, somehow, it was tied to the Earth. The question was, what was it trying to warn them about? What terrible secret had been hidden for so long? Before Sarah could respond, the lights on the ship flickered. The comm system crackled. And then, silence. The entire crew turned to face each other, their faces pale. They had just lost contact with Earth. The sudden loss of communication was no coincidence. Sarah felt the weight of the discovery in her bones. The artifact, the strange visions, and now the sudden silence from Earth. There was something they weren't being told, something that had been hidden from them. Ethan's voice broke through the tension. "Captain, we need to figure this out. We need to understand what this artifact is warning us about, before it's too late." Sarah nodded, a feeling of dread settling deep within her. Something had been hidden for centuries, maybe even longer, and now, the truth was beginning to surface. What every dead civilization knew was now within their reach, and whatever it wasn't going to stay hidden for long. The discovery of the mysterious artifact on Mars was only the beginning. As the crew continued to study the object, they realized that they had stumbled upon something far beyond their understanding. It wasn't just a relic from a forgotten civilization. It was a key, a link to a past that had been erased from history, a past that now seemed to be warning them of something terrible. In the days that followed, the team worked tirelessly, trying to decode the strange symbols on the artifact's surface. But no matter how hard they tried, the meaning remained elusive. The symbols didn't match any known language, and no matter how they attempted to translate them, nothing made sense. Yet the more they looked, the more they felt a connection between the symbols and something much older, something buried deep within the planet they called home. It was as if the artifact had been designed to keep its secrets hidden, to protect the knowledge it carried from those who might try to uncover it. One night, as Sarah sat alone in the lab, a sudden thought hit her. The visions that Ethan had been having, the strange images of Earth, were not random. They were connected to something that had happened long ago, a warning from a civilization that had vanished, leaving only these cryptic messages behind. As she traced the lines of the symbols once again, something clicked. The symbols weren't just images. They were a map to a hidden location on Earth, to something buried deep beneath the surface. It was then that Sarah realized the truth. The artifact wasn't just from Mars. It had been placed there deliberately, waiting to be found. The civilizations that had come before them, the ones that had vanished without a trace, knew of a power beneath Earth's surface, a power so dangerous that they had to hide it from the rest of the galaxy. And it wasn't just any power. It was a living, breathing force, capable of altering the very fabric of reality itself. Ethan was the first to truly grasp the magnitude of what they were dealing with. His visions, which had initially seemed like fragments of a dream, began to make sense. He saw Earth, alive, vibrant, and full of life. Yet there was something wrong. The world had been consumed by a dark force, something that had grown from the very core of the planet. The civilizations that had once thrived there had either been destroyed or driven to the brink of extinction by this force. And now the artifact was trying to warn them. Earth was hiding something that could potentially destroy everything they knew. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that the truth was even darker than they had imagined. The artifact was not a simple relic. It was part of an ancient network, a system that spanned across the galaxy, linking different civilizations together. Some had already fallen, wiped out by whatever lay beneath Earth's surface. Others had narrowly escaped, fleeing before the planet's terrible secret could destroy them as well. The crew began to feel the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. They were no longer just explorers. They were on the brink of something far larger, something that could change the fate of humanity forever. They had to know more. What was buried beneath Earth? What terrible secret had been kept hidden for so long? And most importantly, why had it been hidden in the first place? As Sarah gathered the team together to discuss their findings, they were interrupted by a sudden, sharp jolt that shook the entire station. The lights flickered and alarms blared. Panic spread among the crew as they rushed to the control room, unsure of what was happening. Had they activated something? Was the artifact responding to their presence? Ethan, wide-eyed and breathing heavily, looked at Sarah with fear in his eyes. "Captain, it's happening. The artifact. It's not just a message. It's a warning." Before Sarah could respond, the communication system flickered back to life, but the message they received wasn't from Earth. It was from an unknown source. The voice on the other end was distorted, but the words were clear. "Stop digging. You don't understand what you've uncovered. Leave Mars now. If you continue, you will doom yourselves and everyone you know." The transmission cut off before Sarah could ask any questions, leaving the crew in stunned silence. They were no longer alone in this search. Someone, or something, was watching them. And they weren't the only ones who knew what had been hidden beneath Earth's surface. The warning was clear. They had to stop, or they would be destroyed. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. They had already uncovered too much, and now there was no turning back. The crew was divided. Some wanted to turn back, to leave Mars and return to Earth, to forget the whole thing. But Sarah knew they couldn't. The pieces were coming together, and they had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. The artifact was more than just a mystery. It was a key to understanding the fate of countless civilizations, including their own. And it was now clear that Earth was hiding something so dangerous, so terrifying, that even the ancient civilizations had been forced to abandon it. If they didn't find it and understand it, they could be the next to fall. As Sarah stared out at the barren surface of Mars, a chilling realization settled in. They were being watched, and the truth they sought was darker than they could ever have imagined. The secret of Earth's past was no longer something to uncover. It was something they had to survive, more dangerous than they could ever imagine. The closer they came to unlocking the artifact's secrets, the more they felt the weight of its warning. The strange visions that had plagued Ethan were now affecting other members of the crew as well. Each time someone interacted with the artifact, they would experience vivid, almost prophetic dreams of Earth's past, a world filled with wonder and life, but tainted by an unknown force. The visions grew darker with each passing day. The crew knew they were being pulled deeper into something much bigger than themselves, but they couldn't stop. The desire to know the truth pushed them forward. The crew now worked in a state of nervous urgency, barely sleeping, consumed by the mystery. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they had already crossed a line. She had always believed that exploration was about progress, about discovering new frontiers. But now, as they struggled to decipher the artifact, she wasn't so sure. Every clue, every vision, and every piece of data led them to one horrifying conclusion. Earth was hiding something that could potentially destroy not just their mission, but everything in the galaxy. As they continued their research, they discovered something else that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The artifact wasn't alone. They had always assumed that it was a unique object, a lone relic left behind by an ancient civilization. But when they dug deeper, they found evidence of other similar artifacts scattered across the galaxy. Each one had been deliberately placed on different planets, planets where intelligent life had once existed, but now no longer did. These artifacts were markers, clues left behind by a forgotten race that had once traveled the stars, warning others of the same deadly secret. But there was a pattern. All of the civilizations that had created these artifacts had one thing in common: they had vanished. Some had been destroyed in violent, catastrophic events. Others had simply disappeared, their remains in cities now buried beneath the surface of the worlds they had once inhabited. No one knew why they had vanished, but there were whispers of a force so powerful, so devastating, that it could wipe entire species from existence. The more they learned, the more they understood that they were not the first to uncover this secret. Earth, for reasons unknown, had been marked as the last warning. The other civilizations, scattered across the universe, had either been consumed by whatever lay beneath the planet's surface, or had fled in terror. Now it was their turn to decide. Would they dig deeper and risk the same fate, or turn away and leave the truth buried forever? It was at this moment that Sarah received a message, an urgent transmission from an unknown source. The voice was distorted, but the words were chillingly clear. "You're too late. The truth you seek is already here, and it is already awakening. You should have left when you had the chance. Now you've doomed us all." The transmission ended abruptly, and the crew was left in stunned silence. Someone, or something, had been watching them all along. They weren't the only ones searching for the artifact's secrets. Whoever had sent the message knew what they had uncovered, and they weren't happy about it. But who were they? Were they an ally, trying to warn them of the dangers ahead? Or were they another part of the same hidden force, desperate to stop them from unlocking the truth? Sarah's mind raced as she processed the message. She had known they were not alone in their search, but this felt different. There was a sense of urgency, a warning in the voice that couldn't be ignored. It was clear now that they had uncovered something much bigger than a simple archaeological find. The artifact wasn't just a relic of an ancient civilization. It was a key to unlocking the secrets of Earth's past, a past that was hiding something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The team gathered in the control room, trying to make sense of the message. But before they could discuss their next move, the ship's systems began to malfunction. The lights flickered, the communications went dead, and the temperature inside the station began to rise rapidly. Something was wrong. Something was changing. It was then that Ethan's voice broke through the growing panic. "It's happening. The visions. The artifact. It's connected to all of this. The Force. It's waking up. We're too close now. We have to stop it before it's too late." Sarah turned to face him, her mind racing. She had no idea what was happening, but she could feel the danger closing in. They had been warned time and time again, but now they were on the verge of something unimaginable. They had to make a choice: leave Mars, abandon the search, and hope the universe would be safe, or stay and face the consequences of uncovering Earth's hidden, terrible truth. As the crew worked to stabilize the station, Sarah made a decision. She couldn't walk away. They had come too far, and the truth, whatever it was, needed to be uncovered. The fate of not just their crew, but possibly the entire galaxy, was hanging in the balance. "We're not leaving," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We're going to find out what's beneath Earth's surface, no matter what it takes. We have no choice now." The crew nodded, determined yet fearful, understanding that they were on the brink of something catastrophic. But there was no turning back. They had started this journey, and now they had to see it through to the end, no matter where it would lead. And as they prepared to uncover the next layer of the mystery, the station seemed to shudder once again, as if Earth itself was awakening, ready to reveal its terrible forgotten secret. The decision had been made. There was no turning back now. Sarah and her crew were about to delve deeper into the heart of Earth's ancient secret, the very thing that had destroyed countless civilizations before them. But as they prepared for their journey beneath the surface of the planet, they were unaware of the true danger waiting for them. The artifact's power, its connection to the ancient force buried under Earth, had only just begun to show its true nature. The team had finally decrypted the last of the symbols, and they now had a rough map, a location deep within Earth's crust, where something had been hidden for eons. It was a place where no human had ever ventured, a network of tunnels and chambers that stretched far below the Earth's surface. They had located an underground facility that had been abandoned long before humanity had ever learned to walk upright. The artifact, they realized, had been guiding them all along, leading them to this very place. As Sarah and her team descended into the deep, they could feel the weight of the Earth pressing in on them. The air was thick, the temperature rising as they entered the vast underground complex. The walls were lined with strange symbols, matching the ones on the artifact, but far more intricate and unsettling. The place had an unnatural stillness to it, as if it had been untouched for millennia. The silence was deafening. Every footstep, every breath echoed in the eerie calm. The crew moved cautiously, their lights cutting through the darkness as they navigated the narrow, winding tunnels. They were guided by a sense of urgency, driven by the need to uncover the truth and the fear of what might be lurking in the shadows. As they ventured deeper, they began to see the remnants of a lost civilization, fragments of technology they could not understand, sculptures that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, and large, circular doors carved into the walls, as if the entire structure was built to conceal something far greater. Ethan, still affected by his strange visions, kept muttering to himself as they moved forward. He had seen parts of this place in his dreams, but the reality was far more terrifying. The walls seemed to shimmer with an unnatural glow, and the deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The entire underground complex seemed to hum with an energy that made the crew feel uneasy, as though the very ground beneath their feet was alive, waiting for something. And then they reached the heart of the facility. At the center of the complex stood a massive chamber, its floor covered in strange geometric patterns, and at the center of it all was a colossal stone structure. An obelisk, taller than any building they had ever seen, its surface etched with the same symbols they had been studying. The obelisk was connected to a series of cables and conduits, stretching into the walls and floor, as though it was the core of some enormous ancient machine. This was it. The heart of the secret Earth had been hiding for centuries. The energy emanating from the obelisk was unlike anything Sarah had ever felt before. It was overwhelming, powerful, ancient, and alive. But there was something else, something far darker, lurking beneath the surface of the energy. As Sarah approached the obelisk, a cold chill ran down her spine. She could feel it in her bones. This was not just a machine. It was a prison holding something or someone locked away. The crew stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. The tension in the air was unbearable. The symbols on the obelisk pulsed in time with their heartbeats, as if it were alive and aware of their presence. Ethan stepped forward, his hands shaking. This is the source. This is what destroyed the other civilizations. This is why they were all wiped out. Before anyone could respond, a deep rumble shook the entire chamber. The obelisk began to glow brighter, its surface vibrating with a strange, otherworldly energy. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet cracked open, and a blinding light erupted from the center of the obelisk. The crew staggered back, shielding their eyes from the intense light. The vibrations grew louder, shaking the very foundation of the underground complex. In that moment, they understood the truth. The Earth wasn't just hiding something. It was protecting the galaxy from something far worse. The obelisk wasn't a weapon or a machine. It was a containment device. And what it contained was something ancient, something so powerful that it could destroy not just Earth, but the entire universe. The light began to subside, and the crew cautiously approached the obelisk again. The cracks in the ground slowly sealed up, and the eerie energy that had filled the chamber faded into a tense silence. But then they heard it, the unmistakable sound of breathing. Slow, deliberate, and deep. Ethan's eyes widened in horror. "It's not just a force," he whispered. "It's alive. It's been alive all this time." The air grew heavier, and Sarah could feel the weight of the presence in the room. It wasn't just an ancient force. It was something that had been trapped, imprisoned beneath the surface of Earth for eons. The very thing that had destroyed all the other civilizations, and now it was waking up. The crew exchanged panicked looks. The object in front of them wasn't just a threat to humanity. It was a threat to the entire galaxy. The civilizations that had vanished had not disappeared because of a natural disaster or war. They had vanished because they had uncovered the same secret that Sarah and her crew had just found. And those who had fled hadn't done so out of fear. They had run to survive, to escape the horrors they had unleashed. The room seemed to hold its breath, and Sarah felt the chilling realization sink in. They had made a terrible mistake. By uncovering the obelisk, by awakening it from its ancient slumber, they had just unleashed something that had been buried for a reason. The artifact had guided them here, and now the very thing they had been warned about was rising again. There was no more time to question their choices. The crew had to act. They had to decide: shut the system down, destroy the obelisk, or risk the consequences of releasing the ancient force. And as the room grew colder and the shadow of something massive began to take shape before them, Sarah understood the final truth. They were not in control anymore. The Earth had been hiding something for a reason, and now it was about to reveal itself. It was no longer a question of discovery. It was a race to survive. The air in the chamber was thick with an unsettling silence as the crew stood frozen, staring at the pulsing obelisk. The weight of the moment pressed down on them like a physical force. They had uncovered something that humanity was never meant to know, a terrifying, ancient secret that had been buried beneath Earth for millennia. And now, they had awakened it. The question was no longer about understanding the artifact. It was about survival. The low, rhythmic sound of breathing grew louder, almost reverberating through the walls. It was as if the very ground beneath them was alive, moving with the breath of something vast, ancient, and utterly incomprehensible. Sarah could feel the temperature drop even further. It was as though the obelisk was feeding on the energy around them, pulling in every ounce of warmth, every flicker of life. They were standing on the precipice of something far greater than themselves, something that had the potential to unravel everything they knew. Ethan, who had been the first to sense the danger, stepped back from the obelisk, his face pale, eyes wide with a mix of terror and awe. It's not just a creature. It's a force, a consciousness, and it's awakening. We've done something we shouldn't have. Sarah turned to him, her mind racing. We have to stop it. We have to shut this down before it's too late. But as she spoke, the walls around them seemed to hum, as if the chamber itself was alive and responding to their words. The deep, resonant breathing continued, now joined by a low rumble, almost like distant thunder. The obelisk pulsed brighter, its light filling the chamber and casting long shadows on the walls. It felt like the entire underground facility was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And Sarah realized with a sinking heart, whatever was trapped inside the obelisk was stirring. The crew moved in a tense, silent formation, hands shaking, as they searched for a way to disrupt the obelisk's power. Their every move felt like it was being watched, not just by the entity within the obelisk, but by something beyond it, something far more ancient, far more malevolent. Sarah could feel its presence, a dark energy that permeated the very air, thick and suffocating. They had no time left. Sarah, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper, we can't stop it. It's too late. The power, it's not just here. It's everywhere. This whole place is a network, a prison for this thing. And now the prison is falling apart. It's too powerful. We've already triggered it. We've released it. Sarah shook her head, disbelief mixing with terror. No, we can't just give up. There has to be a way. We can still do something. Before she could finish, the ground trembled again, harder this time. The obelisk's light flared, blinding them all. The walls cracked, and the ceiling above them groaned with a deep, unnatural force. Something massive shifted deep beneath the Earth's crust. A roar, deep and guttural, reverberated through the stone and steel of the underground complex. It was coming. The force that had been locked away for so long was no longer dormant. It was rising. Suddenly, a new sound echoed through the chamber, sharp, metallic, and alien. A massive dark shape began to emerge from the obelisk. At first, it was only a silhouette, a figure that seemed to pulse with dark energy, but as it emerged fully, the crew could see the horrible truth. It was not a being from flesh and bone, but an entity of pure, shifting darkness. Its form was ever-changing, like a shadow that had taken shape, but with eyes. Eyes that glowed with an unnatural light, and that seemed to pierce into their very souls. This was not just a force. It was an intelligence, an ancient, godlike being that had been trapped for eons by the civilizations before them. And now it was free. The creature's eyes fixed on Sarah, and she felt her entire body seize with terror. It was as though it could read her thoughts, understand her fears, and twist them into something much worse. She could feel the weight of its gaze, cold and unrelenting. It was far older than anything humanity had ever encountered, a force that had seen entire worlds burn and civilizations crumble. Ethan backed away, his breathing erratic. "We have to leave. We can't fight this. It's too powerful. We have to get out of here now." But it was already too late. The underground facility had begun to collapse. The walls shook violently, as though the earth itself was reacting to the entity's return. There was no escape. The obelisk's pulse was growing faster, more violent, and Sarah realized with a sinking heart that it wasn't just the facility that was falling apart. It was the planet itself. This entity, this force, was tied to Earth's very core. The moment it had been freed, the entire planet had begun to tremble, and its destruction was inevitable. "Sarah," Ethan shouted, grabbing her arm as she stood frozen in fear. "We need to leave, or we're going to die here." The room was collapsing around them. Massive chunks of rock fell from the ceiling, and the ground cracked wide open beneath their feet. There was no time left for hesitation. They had to act, and they had to act fast. But even as they turned to run, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The creature was no longer just a physical entity. It was everywhere. It had already seeped into the very fabric of Earth, and now it was awake. As the crew scrambled to reach the exit, the walls closed in, the rumbling growing louder. The Earth itself seemed to be shaking, as if it was being torn apart from within. Sarah knew they wouldn't be able to escape. The creature would find them. It always had. It had consumed worlds, civilizations, and now it was coming for them. But then, in a last-ditch effort to stop the unfolding disaster, Sarah made a desperate choice. She activated the ship's self-destruct sequence from her communicator, knowing it might be the only way to stop the entity from spreading further. The massive explosion that followed could be the only thing capable of destroying it, or at least containing it for a time. The ground shook with an ear-splitting roar. The walls of the chamber cracked, the ceiling caving in as the countdown on Sarah's screen hit 0. And then, everything went dark. There was silence. For a moment, Sarah thought she had lost consciousness. But when she opened her eyes, she saw nothing but darkness, a void that stretched on forever. Had they succeeded? Had they stopped the force? Or had the entity, the ancient horror they had awakened, simply moved on? What had Earth been hiding all this time? There were no answers, only silence.